We're joined by Steve Saretsky, Vancouver realtor at Oakwyn Realty and author of the Saretsky Report. Thanks very much for joining us. Has the tax made much of a difference?
I mean, you tell me. We've got record house prices here in the city of Vancouver. I think since the tax was introduced, prices are up officially about 33%. Rents are still climbing. I mean, rents right now are going up actually quite a bit. So I think for the average person, I don't think it's created any more affordability. I think we're still struggling with that. So it hasn't really arrested house prices or rent growth. I mean, it's certainly raised quite a bit of tax revenue for the city. I think some of that is being allocated to affordable housing, so that's always a benefit. But yeah, I think, for the average person, it hasn't really helped.
Is there any kind of a number on how many houses in the Vancouver area are sitting empty, or the percentage?
Yeah, I mean, the city actually releases all this information, which is quite nice. So there's 100 per the city. There's 195,000 homes in the city of Vancouver, and 1,600 of them were hit with the empty homes tax last year. So 1,600 out of 195,000. So obviously, at least the way that the reporting is done and people sort of making declarations, very few number of homes actually being hit with the tax.
Yeah, that's a tiny percentage here. Steve, you've observed or heard of a pretty interesting phenomenon. Lately, some buyers have been getting cold feet. They're looking at rising mortgage costs, and they buy a property and then they try to back out.
Yeah, unfortunately, we're starting to hear that, anecdotally having a lot of conversations with lawyers on the ground, particularly out in the suburbs. Just, they're saying, hey, we're getting all these calls from buyers that are trying to walk away from their deposits and back out of contracts and saying, no, you can't do that. I think people are maybe being short-sighted in the fact that, you end up getting sued for further liabilities or damages. Mm-hmm. And not only that, but you end up, if one buyer backs out of a deal, I mean, you have the potential to blow up 3 other deals in the process. So yeah, it's interesting to hear lawyers saying we're getting these calls that we're not used to, which is people suddenly that purchase 6 weeks ago and have to close in a month, trying to get out of their contracts.
What would you face? A civil suit? The seller would sue you, presumably for whatever damages they calculate they incurred.
Yeah, basically it's like, so you have the deposit which you put down, which is typically 5% of the purchase price. But if that isn't enough and the seller goes to resell their home and the market's down, let's say 15%, well, all of a sudden you've got a 10% shortfall the seller is incurring. So the seller can actually sue you for the difference of whatever the original price was and whatever they have to resell for.
Do you think the politicians in the Vancouver area are loath to do anything that would cause prices to drop sharply? Because the voters wouldn't be happy. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I think the empty homes tax is interesting. I think that changes from the federal level are always interesting. I think the biggest thing as I've been surprised so far is to see the Bank of Canada just, on this aggressive rate hiking path, because I think they've shown time and time again that they tend to side with the asset holders. And anytime housing starts to wobble, the Bank of Canada has been quick to interject. And like I said, I think right now we're in the process of wobbling. And looks like we'll be moving forward with another 50 basis points here in June. And as we can see in this discussion here, people trying to get out of contracts, I think that we're in the early stages of a housing correction.
I know you'll have to be anecdotal here, but are there a lot of Russian property owners and buyers in the Vancouver market? Has there been any impact on them?
No, I haven't really seen much or heard much anecdotally from that. So I think that that hasn't really been much. I mean, I think that the foreign investment, we've talked about it before. I think it's really not, it still isn't what it used to be in 2015, 16, 17. It's such a fraction of what it used to be. And obviously with COVID, I mean, everybody's well aware China's still running a COVID zero policy. And so it's pretty hard to get in and out of the country. And so we're still not seeing a whole lot of active flows from offshore right now.
What about politics? Are politicians united in supporting this empty homes tax, or could it be withdrawn?
I think that it's relatively well received politically. Again, whether you agree with it or disagree with it, I think that the notion is like, well, we've got this housing affordability. People shouldn't be leaving homes empty, so why not tax them? That seems to be, I think, the growing consensus amongst the voter base. But like, again, is it really impacting the housing market? Not really. I just think there's lots of ways around it. I just think that it is a declaration system. We see people, for example, if you've got a detached house, on the west side of Vancouver and you're offshore, well, maybe you just rent out your 1-bedroom basement suite to, a student so they can watch over the house. They're basically like, you give them a sweetheart deal and they watch over your empty house for you. So the basement might be rented out, but the main part of the home might still be vacant, for example.